This is a production of KMmedia.pro. Welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. Our goal is simple: to explore evolving ideas one conversation at a time. So come on over into our world. I know you'll like it, because on today's show, today featuring on Kixie, 8:80 a.m. First of all, welcome everybody to the show. We have a wonderful guest for you today. He's a world-renowned speaker. He does over 100 dates a year. He's a teacher. He's an author. He's a coach. He's a results leader. He's an avid reader, and just like me, he's a poor golfer. But first of all, Eric, how are you today, sir?
Hey, happy Friday, Kevin. I'm doing okay. How are you?
I'm doing just fabulous, thank you. It's been a great day, and I had a wonderful show at noon. We're going to have a great show today. Now, the noon show, of course, I do on KKNW, and this is the new one that we have on Kixie. And I want to thank you for allowing me to be here.
Oh, well, of course. Yeah, we love having you on the air with us.
Well, that's good, because it would suck otherwise. In any event, Danny Brassell is our guest, and he's got a doctorate. He does a lot of speaking. He has been called a cross between Jim Carrey and Robin Williams, and one of the folks that he has worked with in the past. And so, Danny, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Thanks again for having me, Kevin. I really appreciate it. And thanks to Kixie as well.
Well, thank you so much for being here. It's great fun. And I was struck. You're a teacher. You work with kids. You work with readers. You work to help people and families figure out how to get a difficult reader to read better. And because really is a cornerstone of life. Tell us about the movie Stand and Deliver.
Well, Stand and Deliver. I'm one of those people. Everybody loves Dead Poets Society, and I absolutely despise Dead Poets Society. And I always compare it to Stand and Deliver. And people say, "Well, why do you hate Dead Poets Society?" I'm like, "Well, Dead Poets Society is a fictional movie about a boarding school, private boarding school in New England in the 1950s. And Robin Williams comes to the school, and he inspires his students with poetry. Well, Stand and Deliver is a real life story that takes place in the 1980s in East Los Angeles about Jaime Escalante going to Garfield High School to teach advanced placement calculus, where he inspires his students to be excited about calculus. Well, in Dead Poets Society, one of the students, once he finds poetry, he feels hollow inside, and so he commits suicide. And the school, they never liked Robin Williams, and so they use this opportunity to try to get the kids to have their teacher fired. Well, in Stand and Deliver, the kids take the advanced placement exam in calculus, and they all pass it. And the testing bureau decides that since they're from East Los Angeles, they must have cheated, and so they accuse them of cheating. Now, here's the difference between these two movies. At the end of Dead Poets Society, all the kids feel bad because they've gotten Robin Williams fired, and he's about to leave the room. And as he's leaving the room, they stand up on their desk and they say, "Oh, Captain, my Captain." And Robin Williams smiles, and he thinks to himself, "Wow, they like me. I don't give a hoot if they like me or not. I like Stand and Deliver better." Stand and Deliver, what happens in that movie? The kids get accused of cheating, and what do? They take the test over again because their teacher taught them life ain't fair. Sometimes you get accused of the wrong thing. They take the test again. They all pass it. I'm like, that is the better scenario. I don't care if they like me or not. If Robin Williams was a better teacher in Dead Poets Society, the kids would have made sure he never got fired. I hate that. Okay, so I'll get off my little soapbox on that, Kevin. But Stand and Deliver always inspired me because a guy taught the students that were considered to be the dangerous students. I'll tell you what, every kid is the same. They all have the same problems. They grow up in different backgrounds, but I believe if you believe in every student, they will all uh, reach the level of your expectations. Sorry, long answer, short question.
No, that's perfect because just the other day, and well, I guess a couple weeks back, I wanted to go through Trivia Lane, and so I watched To Sir with Love. Have you ever
Ah,
seen
great
that
movie.
movie? Yeah, with Sidney Poitier.
Hmm.
And it was really very much the same thing where kids were not being guided very well, and they were kind of delinquent, and they had no purpose, and so they thought that they could just do whatever they wanted to do, and he came and he tore them all up and changed it, and I love movies like that especially the young people. I agree with you. I think most young people are looking for direction, and they really would like to have um, a real fulfilling life, but they don't know how to get there. And sadly, a lot of teachers apparently don't know how to help them do that. Would they, am I misrepresenting that?
No, I mean, I think that you and I were blessed. We had a lot of great mentors. I know I was very blessed. I had two great parents, and I had a lot of great teachers. Recently, I still teach at the college level, and one of my postgraduate students, I had complimented her on a wonderful paper she had turned in, and she said nobody's ever complimented me on my work, and I'm like, you've gone through 16 years of schooling and nobody ever complimented you. That's an indictment on the system. That's crazy. I mean, if you're ever in my classroom, you're going to hear a lot of encouragement. I mean, one of my role models was Tommy Lasorda, the old manager for the Los Angeles Dodgers. I mean, if you can listen to Tommy Lasorda and not leave feeling belief in yourself and belief in America, then you're a shallower person than me, because that guy pumped me up every time I ever heard him speak. And so that's what I want to do. I always tell teachers every single day, you have a choice. You get to be Darth Vader or Obi-Wan Kenobi. You can be either the darkness or the light. And, it takes about the same amount of effort. You might as well encourage, and you never know how far a kid can go.
I agree 100%. And as a matter of fact, in my life, a lot of my mentors were coaches.
Hmm.
And they were a little league coach and my high school football coach, and they really were. They gave me a sense of purpose and a sense of belonging and all of that. And that a good school, a good teacher can bring that all together if they don't get burned out. Is that part of our problem in the school system? Do you think that teachers?
Oh yeah, of course. Teachers are all getting burned out. Everybody loves to blame the schools for every single problem. People don't want to have the difficult conversations in America. Things like, well, a lot of kids are going to bed hungry. A lot of kids are going to bed without one of their birth parents present in the home. There's a lot of societal problems that are easy to blame on. I mean, I've spoken to two school districts this week just to tell you how crazy America is. One school district, the big issue was which pronoun to use. And the other school district, the big issue was, should we arm the teachers so the kids are safer? I'm like, whoa, the extremes have taken over in this country. There's a common sense, a little bit of a medium between these two extremes. And I'm kind of sick of hearing red people and blue people. I'm like, when did we become red or blue? Why don't we become red, white, and blue? It's all right if we disagree with one another. That's fine. I love it. I always encourage my students to disagree with me. I tell them, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to teach you how to think. And it's great if you're questioning things, and it's great if we disagree. You just have to do it in a respectful manner. And unfortunately, since our adults don't seem to be doing that such a good job of that, it's even more critical that we get our kids to be a little bit better about that.
It's pretty dynamic right now that the example that adults are putting up for kids ain't so great.
Mm.
And we really should do a much better job of and that's one of the reasons why this show exists, is that we want to be positive and we want to work together with each other. And you're right, we can disagree, but if we're looking after the right reasons for what we are doing, which is the betterment of society, we'll come away with some positives, I think, that we can work together on.
Absolutely. I mean, I learned that in Catholic school in second grade. Sister Rosanna, I was yelling once, and she said, "Oh, when you yell, it means you're losing your argument." And I thought, "Oh, I always remember that when I hear people yelling. I'm like, no, if you can be civil and disagree with one another, but you should also listen to other people." Maybe it's because I'm just getting older. I'm learning, one of my favorite little rhymes I used to teach the kids was, "A wise old owl sat in an oak. The more he heard, the less he spoke. The less he spoke, the more he heard. Why can't we all be like that wise old bird?" There's a lot of truth to that. I think a lot of those nursery rhymes probably are the most important life lessons.
Why is it that you don't think that, or why is it that we don't listen the way that either we never have, or we don't listen because we want to get our own point of view across and we're
Mhm.
not interested in a real honest to goodness dialogue and to find out where people are coming from? What do you think it is?
I don't know. I mean, I think people usually, yeah, I was a journalist before I was a teacher. And so when people talk about fake news, I'm like, there's no such thing as fake news. There's people who rely on one news source. I mean, you need to listen to different points of view. And again, you don't have to agree with those points of view, but you have to understand those points of view are out there. I'm always curious when I listen to people. And I actually, a person, you can sell me. If you can show me a better way, I'll listen. I mean, I like to listen, but maybe it's that we're not doing a good enough job of teaching listening as a skill. We talk about that when I'm working with corporate executives. We talk about soft skills, but I'm like, I don't know why they're called soft skills, because a lot of those soft skills are the most important skills that you'll ever learn. Things like listening, things like being able to present your point of view and get people to think critically without shouting. How to build relationships with people. I don't think those are soft skills at all. I think those are essential and probably the most important skills that you'll have. It's kind of like, was it Charles Swindle? Say that 5 times fast. Charles Swindle always had that great long quote, and I don't remember it by word, but he's talking about attitude. That the longer he lives, the more he realizes that attitude is the most important thing on the planet. It's more important than education. It's more important than anything, because how you view it, things happen to all of us, but it's your attitude about, well, how do you perceive that? So again, I'm kind of going all over the place, but yeah, I guess the short answer to your question is we need to learn how to listen to one another a little bit better. That's hopefully people listening in right now, that they're considering different points of view.
Which is a really good thing for all of us if we were to open up, and that's one of the things that social media and the current state of media has done, is it has segmented us to where you can go all day, all week, all month and not listen to anybody who disagrees with you, whether or not that's true or not, or it's accurate or should be said that way. You don't have to listen to people who disagree with you, but that's how you grow, is to listen to other points of view and to then critically think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think Henry David Thoreau would have been quoted saying, "Oh, a life well lived is one where you spend 90% of your time disagreeing with strangers on social media." That's crazy.
It's a crazy world that we've
It
got.
is. It's a crazy world.
Now, I wanted to ask you, because you do 100 or more dates a year traveling around the country. We were talking before the show that you're going to Singapore for
Yep.
3 weeks,
I'll be in
then
Singapore,
to
then I'll be
Iowa.
in Iowa, then I'll be in Kentucky. All the important spots on the map.
And if somebody wants to hire you to come speak to them, first of all, what would you speak to them about?
Yeah, so my mission is to bring joy back into education and the workplace, and I do that in 4 different ways. First of all, like you said, I speak all over the world to schools, to organizations, to companies on how to build better relationships with one another, how to get your mind in a positive mindset. Secondly, I have the world's top reading engagement program online, which teaches parents in just over 2 months how to get their kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. Because while I find schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read, what good is it teaching a kid how to read if they never want to read? I teach kids why to read because I've never had to tell a kid, go turn on the TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want them to choose to do it on their own because they enjoy it. Third, I work with a company called Cyber Smarties based out of Ireland, founded by Diarmid Hudner, which is a social media platform for kids ages 5 to 12 that teaches kids positive social media habits. So, for example, if I were to type a message to you, Kevin, I think you're ugly, it won't let me send the message. Instead, it says, that's not a nice thing to say to Kevin. Here are some positive things you could say to Kevin. And it frustrates kids so much that it slows them down that our data shows within 3 days, the kids will only send positive messages. And this program has single-handedly eliminated cyberbullying in Ireland. Now the program's in India, Turkey, UAE, New Zealand, and I'm in charge of spreading it across America. And I have big plans for this because it's a great opportunity for schools and law enforcement to work together. So we ask questions every day like, how are you feeling? Well, if a kid writes 4 days in a row that they're feeling angry, well, now we're not going to tell the law enforcement agency which kid is doing it. We're just going to say, well, in this school, there's kids that are reporting anger. We need to be proactive about this. It's crazy, all these school shootings. It really concerns me. So school should be a safe environment for kids. And then the fourth thing I do is I work with entrepreneurs, business executives, and small business owners on how to create powerful presentations that get their audience to take the next step, whether that's to purchase your product or to donate to your cause or to just invest in your idea. So again, a very long answer to a short question, but I have all kinds of different pots on the fire, as we like to say.
And your husband and the father
Yeah.
and the brother and a son and
Yeah.
all you got a lot going on. When do you have time for all this?
Well, I mean, Oprah only has 24 hours in her day. Harvard did a study. They found 100 years ago, people only had 24 hours in their day as well. It's not about
Shocking.
everybody has the same amount of time. It's how do you prioritize your time? I mean, when I talk to people and they can tell me about everything happening in every single TV show, well, that tells me how they're spending their time. you know?
Oh, and the thing I remember when there were 3 channels,
No.
and one independent channel, and now I don't have any idea how many there are. There are hundreds of these things.
Yeah, you and I are old, Kevin. I mean, when I was a kid, I was the remote control. My parents would have me turn the knob. And when we were kids, you remember this, at midnight, all of a sudden they played the Star Spangled Banner, and there was no TV until like 6 or 7 in the morning. That's the world we live in.
Yeah, it would play the Star Spangled Banner, and then it would go to the test pattern, and you'd hear this.
That's right.
And so everybody had to go to bed. There was nothing to do after that. So
Yeah.
now,
And I remember when I was a kid, I was telling that my kids can stream anything on their phone right now when they're right now. And I'm like, when I was a kid, I had to wait until like the second Saturday in April every year because that's when CBS would play Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. If I had to pee, I had to hold it until there was a commercial break because, I mean, it's not happening for another year. Everybody's spoiled. I'm sounding more and more like an old guy every day. Get off my lawn, you kids. I was telling my kids, like, I was alive when they invented microwave ovens. Like, my kids have no concept about that. I mean, it's crazy, but I love it. I mean, I embrace the technology. People, it's kind of like I was talking to a school 2 weeks ago about artificial intelligence, and the teachers are freaking out. They're like, "Oh,
I was going to bring that up."
Happen, and I'm like, we have to embrace technology. Just so you know, the kids know about it, so you can't put your head in the dirt. You got to figure out how do you use AI to your advantage.
And we don't know where it's going. I had somebody on just the other day, and they, what is it, GP chat or
one GPT?
Yeah, and it developed an understanding of a language that they didn't teach it, and they don't know how that happened.
Yeah,
well,
but this isn't even me talking to you right now. This is my AI. I've learned how. I taught my AI how to be just like me and how to answer your questions, Kevin.
Well, that's darn nice of your AI to show up. Isn't it embarrassing though when your AI is going to be smarter than you are and say things that?
Well, the one thing that's good that's going for me is AI so far doesn't understand humor, because I've tried to get it to create jokes and I'm like, wow, okay, I still have a job because AI does not understand humor at all.
Oh, that's good news right
It is
there.
good news.
Yeah, indeed. So you're traveling all over the world and you are seeing a bunch of folks. What give us a thumbnail sketch of the state of the United States and our school system. I think it needs a lot of work.
Well, there's always, I could focus on all the doom and gloom. That's what the media likes to usually do. But there's all kinds of great things happening. There's all kinds of great innovations. I was interviewed a couple of days ago, and the anchor, she asked me about, well, which do you think are better, Danny, private schools or public schools? And my answer was yes. It depends on the kid. Some kids, it's public school. Some kids, it's a charter school. Some kids, it's homeschool. Some kids, it's a vocational school. There's all kinds of different. We try to it's a lot easier to have every kid be the same, but the problem is if you're teaching 33 kids, they're probably all completely different. And this is the role of the teacher, is just like what you're talking about earlier about being a good coach. A good teacher is a good coach. When I was in high school at the awards banquet for my basketball team, my basketball coach gave me the most improved player, and I'll never forget what he said. He said, some players you can yell at, some players you got to talk to. Danny, you got to talk to him. And that just made me laugh because I remember he pointed at me in the chest once and I got like 5 fouls in like 30 seconds. I was just plowing over everybody, and he learned, oh, I can't yell at Danny because Danny takes it personally. Everybody's a little bit different. And, it's kind of what is it, the carrot and the stick kind of philosophy. I've never been much of a stick guy. I think stick might have short-term results, but I think if you really want to create people that are real leaders, then you got to really focus on what's their internal motivation, what's the long-term motivation. How do you get a person to start believing in themselves? And I love that. That's what I really miss about being a teacher, was really working with different kids and figuring out, well, what is it that turns this kid on? How can I? What's that light bulb? And that's the reward as a coach too. I love watching. There's certain coaches I watch. I'm like, wow, this guy really knows the psychology, or this gal knows the psychology of their teams.
Well, I know that you're talking to me from Denver, Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And first of all, I'm sorry that the air quality is bad because of some forest fires up north of you.
Dang Canadians. Yeah, Canadian fires we have the worst air quality on the planet, according to the news this morning.
Well, stay inside and stay safe. But one of my favorite motivational people and coaches is Pete Carroll. From the Seahawks, and I know you have Russell Wilson now, and you're welcome to him. Thank you, and thank you for the draft picks. Anyway, I digress. But a quality coach can have the ability to impact people's lives for the rest of their life,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm sure that you remember people in your world that they had sayings and ways of doing things that impacted you for forever. Then you still mentally call them up today.
Absolutely. Well, you don't actually, this is what I always tell people, is maybe you don't have those types of people in your life, but you can still have them as mentors. I mean, I never met Abraham Lincoln, but I consider Abraham Lincoln a mentor of mine. I can read his work, and I just love it. The same thing with coaches. I never got to meet Coach John Wooden, the UCLA basketball coach who won 10 national championships, but I can learn from his knowledge. I mean, what's amazing to me when I look at Coach Wooden is his players. He had 27 years at UCLA, and this is something that a lot of organizations should learn from. Is he coached at UCLA for 14 seasons before they won a national championship, and then he rattled off 10 and 12 years. So these organizations that love to fire the coach after a season or two, I mean, sometimes you got to give people a chance. Pete Carroll's a perfect example. I mean, Pete Carroll was humiliated as the head coach of the New England Patriots, and then he went to USC, where I'm a huge USC fan, and he was about 88th on our list of people that we wanted to coach our team. And what happened? He took us to 3 national championship games. Then he goes to Seattle and takes them to a couple of Super Bowls. I mean, that's amazing. So just because you don't have that person in your life doesn't mean they can't be in your life. I mean, I watch film all the time of former NC State basketball coach Jim Valvano, and I'm like, my gosh, I would have run through a wall for that guy.
Yeah.
Lou Holtz, I've watched Lou Holtz, the speaker, used to coach. He was a national champion with Notre Dame.
Yep.
And if you ever have a chance to watch him speak, he's a hoot. I mean, after 5 minutes, I realized, oh, that's why he was such an effective coach. Was his players just loved him, and that's what I'm always looking for. I mean, I played football in high school. My offensive line coach, Coach Putnam, he was the greatest guy ever. He'd shout at us all the time. He's like, hey, Brassell, you're just like, what's his name? You never remember anything. And it's things like that I loved. Or he'd have his other saying was, bite him, kick him, and slug him, but play fair. That was a great thing. I was a center on our offensive line, and I'll never forget because Troy Wilkinson on my right was my right guard, and Randy Mestis was the right tackle. And Coach Putnam always called Wilkinson Buford, and Mestis he always called Herkimer. And one day Troy Wilkinson he's like, "Why you always call me Buford?" And he says, well, Buford means, I can't really say this on the air. It means dummy. He said something much stronger than that. He's like, Buford means dummy. And then Mestis is like, well, what's Herkimer mean? He's like, Herkimer has to ask Buford what to do. And it just made me, and he'd yell at us so much, his dentures would fall out. And he was just the greatest. I absolutely loved that. But I mean, I had all kinds of wonderful people in my life like that supported me. And it breaks my heart that not everybody has those people in their life. And this is anybody that's listening right now that wants to be a teacher. You really have that power, and you don't have to be 20 years old to become a teacher. Some of the best teachers I know, they start when they're 60 years old. They retire from their corporate gig. I mean, that's what Escalante did for Stand and Deliver. He was a very successful executive, and he decided to give back to his community and teach in East Los Angeles. And he had a huge impact on lots of lives. I mean, and that's what gets me going as a teacher is when I realized that Oprah, she had a teacher that inspired her. When I'm looking at my kids every day, I'm like, hey, maybe you're going to be the next president someday. Maybe you're going to be a Supreme Court justice. Maybe you're going to be a really good parent. And I had something to do with inspiring you to do that. And I take that very seriously. I love, really, one of my jobs when I'm speaking to schools is talking teachers and administrators off the cliff, because a lot of them just want to quit. We're losing educators left and right. I'm not going to give the states and the cities, but there are 2 states right now that only have 4-day school weeks because they can't get teachers to work 5 days a week. There is one state that just passed a law that says you don't need a bachelor's degree to teach to teach anymore. I mean, it's unbelievable. There's one city I was just in that has 2,000 teaching openings, and so right now the student to teacher ratio is about 73-1. And so these are the challenges that we're seeing in a lot of places.
And that needs to change. We need
to change. I was in Japan, and this is, Kevin, you'll love this story. So this woman, she was so proud. In her broken English, she's introducing me to her 3 sons, and she says, this son, he is a doctor, and this son, he is a lawyer. And then she gets a big smile. She's like, but this son, he is a teacher. And I was like, wow, look at the cultural differences, how much respect they gave to the teacher there as compared to here. People say, oh, you don't know anything, that's why you became a teacher. I'm like, well, how are you going to get that? It's kind of like when people criticize politicians. I'm like, well, how do you think we're ever going to get good politicians if you criticize everybody that runs for office? I mean, you get exactly, there's a good book. I think it's great. A lot of people say it's good. It says you reap what you sow. So
I've heard of that book.
yeah, it's a bestseller. Check it out.
By the way, we're talking with Dr. Danny Brassell, and go to his website, which is dannybrassell.com. That's BRASSELL.com. You've got a ton of information there. He's got 16 books that he's written. 16, isn't it?
16. I'm writing number 7. Actually, well, I wrote one a couple of weeks ago, but I'm not going to count it as a book because I just released it as an ebook and I'm giving it away for free to people. So I'm not going to count that. The other book I'm writing right now is really cool. I'm excited about that one. It's number 7.
We'll talk about that when we come back because we need to take a quick break. But you can go to his website, and I think you can pick up the ebook. I think it's right there that you can get it, and it's for free. So it would be a really good idea for you to do that. We're talking again with Danny Brassell. We will be right back after these quick messages. It's just 2 minutes. Just hang on. We'll be right back. Hey, PTR loyal listener. First, thanks for being in my dream. And second, I have a new concept in business to share with you. It's called socialpreneurship. So, what's that? Well, it's the idea that any company designates all profits beyond expenses to be awarded to a local or international charity or project which is working to achieve good in the world. KM Media is such a company. We believe that it's important for us to give back whenever possible and to make great things happen. So I hope you'll join us in creating this new business model that will positively impact all of us. In the next few weeks, we will lay out the plan and begin our fundraising efforts. So stay tuned for more details right here on Positive Talk Radio.
When you want to say more than words communicate, you can with flowers. Your custom boutique floral studio in Bothell, Washington is anaturaldesign.com, connecting you to nature through the language of flowers. Where your people are is where our flowers are beautiful. Your success is our goal. anaturaldesign.com at your fingertips today.
Hey, thanks for listening to Positive Talk Radio. Did you know that we're also a media production company? Well, surprise, we are. We can create all kinds of audio, video products to fill any need. Please visit kmmedia.pro/our-store for a complete list of products and services. In addition, do you need a great voice to add to your own website or any other project? I know that we can add depth and quality to your work. I've been told more times than I can count by many professionals in the business that my voice adds to the quality of the presentation. So, let me create something for you. Please contact me at kevin@kmmedia.pro and let's create something great. And welcome back to Positive Talk Radio. My name is Kevin McDonald, and we've got a great guest for you today. He is a, dare I say it, world-renowned teacher and educator, and he speaks over 100 times a year. He talks to CEOs. He talks to everybody that'll listen to him about some of the great things that he's working on. By the way, I wanted to ask you, have you ever heard of socialpreneuring before?
I have not. So I like that term. I was like, oh, that's a good one, Kevin. So tell us more about socialpreneurship.
And what it is what we are dedicated to doing is, and there are companies that are starting to do this, and they can be a nonprofit, they can be a for-profit, they can be a hybrid of some kind. And what the idea is that you work to fundraise to, number one, pay your expenses so that you can, I don't know, like stay on the air or continue doing what you're doing. And then any profits that you generate, you designate a charity or a program that is needed in the world. As an example, I don't know if you know this, but I know you do know this. There are 12 to 13 million kids that are going to bed hungry every night in the United States of America. And that is, in my opinion, that's a crime. That should not be here. We should be much better than that. And so that's what we're doing, and to help fundraise to make that happen. And then the other one is you're a professional, and I like to think that I've got a good radio voice. So if you want to hire me to do something along those lines, you can do that too. Anyway, so that's the commercial content that we've got right there. So, but socialpreneurship, I think, is a great way for all of us to give back and to support causes that you believe in.
I love that. That's great. Well done, Kevin.
Well, we're we're gonna do it. Doggone it, it's important. And by the way, we're again, if somebody wants, you just finished the ebook and it's out, and I believe it's on your website. Yes.
Well, if you go to, well, I'll do this for all your listeners as a thank you for listening to me. If you go to freegiftfromdanny.com, again, freegiftfromdanny.com, I'll give you 2 freebies. First of all, you'll get an e-copy of my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed, which is a book I wrote for a school principal who was trying to keep his faculty and staff positively engaged. So I said, okay, I'll write you a book. So every week I give you a concept, an inspirational quote, an inspirational story, a book recommendation on a book you should read, but you're probably too lazy because you're an adult. So I also give you a children's picture book recommendation, demonstrates the same concept. You can read that in 5 minutes. There's nothing that gets me more excited than watching CEOs start their meetings with Dr. Seuss books. I think it's fantastic. And then secondly, I'm going to give everybody access to a 5-day reading challenge I did online last summer for about 700 parents around the world, where every day for an hour for 5 consecutive days, I give you all kinds of tips to get your kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. You can get all of that at freegiftfromdanny.com.
I thank you for that. That's really cool. You know, before I came back to doing radio, and I think I told you I was a bus driver for a period of time.
Yeah, I love that.
And I did not realize, and I think a lot of people don't, who in the course of their life just go about their life and they figure everybody can read. Everybody knows how to read and so forth. But there were multiple times, happened all the time, where somebody would come up to me with the schedule in hand. And I would be driving, and so I can't really look at them. But I would say, or they would say, "Can you tell me when you're going to get to this stop, or what bus I make connection to get to here?" And I said, "Well, it's right there in the schedule." But they couldn't. They didn't want to tell me that they couldn't read it.
Yeah.
But it became obvious that they couldn't. How does a human being survive in our society if they can't read?
Yeah, there's nothing more rewarding to me than working with a lot of public libraries on their adult literacy programs. I mean, there's people that have gone through the system and been able to fool everybody that they could read, and they couldn't read anything. Fortunately, there's all kinds of wonderful programs, many of them created by public libraries all over the world, that will help adults learn how to read. And I'd say probably the 2 most rewarding things I ever go to are graduations for adults in literacy programs. And if you ever go to a naturalization ceremony, everybody gripes about America. I'm like, go to a naturalization ceremony. You'll leave singing the Star Spangled Banner. You'll be so proud because you see these people who come to our country. They learn more about our country than and most of us that are born here. And they become really the best citizens we have, the proudest and the most productive. And that goes right along with your whole mission and theme, Kevin, about being positive. And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier about attitude. Also, I mean, when people say "woe is me," I just encourage them. Why don't you visit the Children's Hospital, the cancer ward? It'll give you some perspective really quickly.
Boy, no kidding. Boy, no kidding. My philosophy is, I'll share it in a nutshell, is that you are the culmination of all your experiences, both good and bad. But if you take them from the standpoint of whatever the experience was, I'm here to learn from it and to be better because of it, then you have a positive mindset and a positive attitude about it rather than a woe is me, I'm a victim. You are now the captain of your own captain, my captain. You can be captain of your own ship and you can grow to become whatever and whoever you want to be. That's my philosophy. What do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. I'll be your Baptist in the front row saying amen. One of my favorite speakers and authors is John Maxwell. And he always says that. He says, sometimes you win, sometimes you learn. And what a great attitude.
And exactly. And it is not that difficult to do, but sometimes you need a coach. You need somebody to help you get through it. And when you do your coaching, what do you focus on?
Well, there's lots of different people. They call it like the perfect pitch or the signature talk. I call it the stump speech. You can call it peanut butter and jelly. What a stump speech is, or what a signature talk is, perfect pitch is basically, it's like your speaking fingerprint. It's what makes you uniquely you. And so when I work with people, our measure of success is not that you get a standing ovation, and our measure of success is not that people come up afterwards and say, wow, you're a really good speaker. Our only measure of success is that people want to take the next step with you, which is, maybe it's to purchase your product, or to donate to your charity, or to really just to buy into the idea that you're pitching to people. And so I'll work, sometimes companies will fly me out, and for 2 days I'll work with about 8 to 10 of their executives crafting their presentations. Now I do once a month online. I'll work with about 8 to 10 people. I like 8 to 10 people because I get to give everybody the individual attention that they deserve. But more importantly, when you watch other people that are struggling with, some people are scared to death about giving a talk, and some people, they're dry and they don't really get their audience engaged, and some people, they just they want to get better. That's what we work on. One of my specialties is adding humor and engagement to talks. I work with a lot of engineers who aren't known for their sense of humor. And I had a guy, I'm not going to give you his real name, but he was an Indian engineer. He's very, very dry. And the way we made his talk a lot better is he starts off now, he's like, my name is Majid Maharaji. Gee, I sure hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I mean, and we're not going for, you don't have to be a stand-up comedian. We're just trying to get you to get your audience to smile and realize that you're a real human being. I mean, I agree with what Brené Brown says. She's a wonderful speaker. She talks a lot about vulnerability. And really, the first tip I give people is, don't share with others your successes. Share with others your failures, because not everybody in your audience has succeeded, but they've all failed. And the more you talk about your struggles, the more they're going to love you, because they're going to relate to you, because all of us have had those struggles. The reason I use humor, I was coaching a speaking competition recently, over 1,300 speakers, and not a single one gave a funny speech. They were the most depressing speeches I've ever heard. I wanted to jump off a cliff afterwards. And here's my problem with the sad talk. Now, people get mad at me about this. I'm like, okay, I know the sad talk and emphasizing the pain is a very effective strategy, but to me, it's very manipulative. First of all, I ask people, we just went through a global pandemic. A lot of stuff has happened to a lot of people. I don't need to hear your sob story. There's a lot of people hurting out there. I think people need hope. I don't think they need to hear about the hurt. Second of all, do you really want to deliver that speech 1,000 times about the saddest moment in your life? I mean, you got to be a stronger person than me. And here's the third thing, which is usually what gets people angry with me. I love telling jokes. I have one mission: is to get people smiling and laughing and enjoying life. And there's something very admirable about that. I can tell the same joke thousands of times. I can stretch the truth with it a little bit, but my objective is always the same: is to get you to smile. Now, when you tell the same sad story again and again, I believe after the 20th time you've said it, those are crocodile tears. It's no longer this deeply affecting thing. I think it's very manipulative, and I see people do it all the time. And I question the ethics behind it. Yeah, so I'd much rather, I'd much rather get people laughing than crying. There's enough pain in the world already. We were talking about that show on TV. It's the worst show on TV. It's called The News, and it's the most depressing show. And it always gets people, there's a reason that they advertise antidepressants during the newscast, is because it's the worst show on TV. I like happy things. I think the world needs a lot more laughter.
And what I found in my life is that people respond to happiness much better than they respond to sadness. And it's important that you present yourself in a happy way. And besides the fact, since you teach and coach speakers, I wanted to ask you, because it seems to me that most audiences when they're sitting there in a TED Talk or at a corporate meeting, wherever, they're vested because they're sitting there and they're taking their time.
Yeah.
They are truly are interested in the success of the speaker. And yet the speaker is like wringing their hands, going, "Oh, they're not going to like me," or "What if I make a mistake?" or "What if I say or ah or whatever." They're vested in you, and they want you to succeed. And is that kind of right?
Yeah, I agree. I think people are pretty cool generally, and they want you to do well. And I take people's time very seriously. I want them, and most of the people I work with, Kevin, they really aren't speakers. They're people that a lot of them have stage fright. I mean, I was working with a woman a couple of weeks ago and she was terrified. And in just 3 hours, we got her. It was like night and day. But I told her that. I said, I was speaking in India to a school. And at the end of my speech, this little boy comes up to me. He's about 6 years old and he's missing his left arm and he has tears in his eyes. He's like, "How can somebody like me succeed?" And so I crouched down to his level and I said, when I was your age, I went to 18 different schools before I was 12 years old. I mean, every school I went to, all the kids and even some of the teachers called me stupid, but because I didn't speak right, I stuttered. And finally, I made it to a school where a teacher took the time to work one-on-one with me, and she would sing things to me. And we discovered that I could sing back without my stutter. It's kind of like the movie The King's Speech. And eventually, I lost my stutter and I became a swan. But what I said to that little boy, I'm like, isn't it interesting that the little boy that everybody said was stupid, who couldn't talk right, now gets paid incredible sums of money to travel the planet to do what? To speak. And he just had this big grin after that. And I told him, I'm like, don't let anybody ever tell you what you cannot do. Anybody that's ever accomplished anything was told they could not do it. The fun was proving everybody it could be done. And so that's the message I want to give to, and one of my underhanded agenda is really, I like to work particularly with minorities and with women because I think they're underrepresented in speaking. And I think we need to hear their voices a lot more. And so I'm very blessed. I get to work with a lot of women and minorities. As a matter of fact, right now one of the women I'm working with has won 3 Olympic gold medals. Another woman, she runs a very successful real estate business. One guy is from Saudi Arabia, and he's climbed the 7 summits, including Mount Everest. And I love it because I think, it's important that kids see people that look a little bit like them, just because that's a little bit of extra legitimacy where they're like, huh, if he or she could do it, maybe I could do it as well.
And I think that we need to get to that point where we all are treated equally, and regardless of what our skin color is or who we love or any of that stuff, that we're all have the same opportunities to go do some great things.
Yeah.
And but it's great to have examples of guys. Like, as an example, had you told me, and I remember you saying it now, but I'd totally forgotten it, that when you were a kid, you were a stutterer.
Hmm.
And I never would have even put you and that in the same room together, because, like, "Oh, come on, no." He's a professional speaker, he goes all over the world, he does it for a living, and he was a stutterer when he was a kid? I don't know, that can't be true. But it only just goes to show you that regardless of where you are today, that doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be tomorrow. You can do anything you choose to do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Our story is still being written. I love it that Tom Brady was a 6th-round draft selection and every other team looked stupid. And I love it when New England Patriot fans say, "Oh, we were smart enough to draft him." Like, yeah, you were so smart, you drafted 4 guys ahead of him. I mean, nobody knows. You look at Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson was a 3rd-round draft choice in his 2nd season, takes his team to the Super Bowl. There's nothing better than watching those types of people that overcome extraordinary. There's so many people out there. I love reading biographies of successful people. Very few successful people were born with a whole bunch of advantages. Most of them worked their tails off. They failed a lot, and they kept on getting up, and doing better the next time. That's one of my favorite, Max Levchin. A lot of people don't know who Max Levchin is. He has one of my favorite quotes, and I'm going to paraphrase it. He said, my first company was a total disaster. My second one was a little bit better, but it still failed. Number 3 was kind of all right. We were starting to get on the right track. The fourth company I started was almost right. The fifth company was PayPal. So, if it only takes you 5 tries to get to $1 billion, you're not doing a bad job.
But we all have it happens to all of us.
Mhm.
Is it sometimes we fail, and it's okay because you learn, but the one thing that you cannot do is quit.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you keep going and you keep working at it, you will succeed at some level. But you can't quit. You got to keep going.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
So it's great having you here, Danny, because I really appreciate your positiveness, and you're helping people live their lives a little bit better. Do you feel that when you go home at night and you're hanging out with your kids and your wife and do you feel like you're having an impact in the world?
Well, not every night, but it's nice every now and then somebody will write you a nice note, or I mean, I had a woman a couple of weeks ago had written me a letter, and she said, I was going to quit teaching. I've been teaching for 34 years, and after listening to your speech, now I'm going to keep on keeping on because of you. I'm like, well, I'm trying to build up some currency, so when I go to heaven, I have something to show for it.
Well, the way I look at it is this: if you regardless of whether you're a coach, you're a teacher, you're a speaker, you're a talk show host, you're going to have an impact on people that you will never meet.
Mhm.
And that's perfectly okay. Or if you are the cashier at a grocery store and you have a smile on your face and you say hello to everybody, you're going to meet people that you're going to have an impact on. They may not say anything, and that's perfectly okay. That's within their rights.
Just like Leroy, you said it, Kevin. Leroy, I was late for a flight at Los Angeles International. I had to fly from LA to Orlando, and not only was I late, I had to check a bag, which is one of my cardinal sins. Oh my gosh, I had to check a bag, and so I went to curbside, and the woman in front of me is screaming at this poor. I don't remember what you call the guy, the sky cap.
Yeah.
She's just screaming at this poor sky cap, calling him every foul name possible. She walks away, and I look at this gentleman, and he gives me the biggest smile, Kevin. He's like, good morning, sir, and how can I help you? And I said, well, first off, I got to shake your hand. And second of all, I need to know your name. He's like, Leroy, sir, what's your name? I'm like, my name's Danny Leroy. You've got to tell me your secret. He's like, what's that, Danny? I'm like, that woman was so rude to you. And when I came up to you, I thought you were going to be in a foul mood. And you greeted me with the biggest smile. And you're just so jovial. What's the secret? And he gives that big grin again. He's like, well, Danny, it's like this. She's on her way to Orlando, and her bag's on its way to Philadelphia. That's what all of us have to keep in mind.
And I want everybody to know that what airport was this at? Was this at the
Los Angeles?
You met Leroy?
Leroy, yeah.
You met Leroy in Los Angeles, and because of the smile that he had on his face and his disposition, his story is now all over the airwaves of Seattle.
Absolutely. It was fantastic.
You never know where you're going to touch somebody, how you're going to touch somebody. So you have an obligation to make sure that you touch them in the best way that you can.
Well, and that's perfect, Kevin. I had my second grade teacher was Miss Hess in Iowa Falls, Iowa. Miss Hess was amazing. All of us second graders one day were working at our desk, and she interrupts us. She's like, class. And she holds up a pencil. She's like, raise your hand if you can see this pencil. And all of us raise our hands. And she's like, good. follow me. She takes us all out in the hallway and she says, raise your hand if you can see the exit sign at the end of the hallway. And all of us raise our hands and she's like, good, follow me. She takes us out to the playground. She's like, raise your hand if you can see that house across the street. All of us raise our hands. She's like, good. Now this is a tough one. Raise your hand if you can see the water tower 5 blocks away. And all of us raise our hands and she's like, good. Now here's a tough question. How far can you see? And one little girl's like, I can see 1 mile. And I'm like, I can see 2 miles. And another boy's like, I can see 5 miles. And she's like, good. Any farther? And all of us shake our heads. And she's like, all right, now look up. All of us look up. She's like, raise your hand if you can see the sun. And all of us raise our hands. And she's like, good. Did you know that the sun is 92.9 million miles away? And the farthest any of you thought you could see was 5 miles. You all are grossly underestimating what you're capable of.
You've been listening to Danny Brassell. Go to DannyBrassell.com. Thank you so much. And by the way, be kind to everyone because each other's all we've got. Well done. Oop.